Routine breakup. By J.C. Woods. Status, first pass edits completed.
Is it better to take the stage after a comic who died or one who killed? Asked Wally as he nervously faced a hostile and now drunk audience. A show is supposed to increase momentum as each comic builds upon the prior to an orgasmic climax of laughter. Tonight, the venue appears to be breaking with tradition by following a progressive approach. I'm going to embrace that to lead you all into the cataclysmic fiery crash. Wally eyed the crowd for a reaction. Not even the truth could make this long-suffering crowd even smirk. Tonight, a parade of claptivist comics abused the crowd with the same trite politically correct talking points. The last woman was the worst as her unoriginal words were not funny when better comedians had spoken them years before. My vagina, Wally began. Audience members looked at each other confused as the formula was not being followed to cast the spell dissolving the system. One guy in the audience leaned forward curious where the comic was going to take him. Is gone. Recently, I broke up with my girlfriend. Don't feel any sympathy for me as she told me that it was all my fault. Surveying the crowd, Wally saw recognition gleam in the eyes of both the men and the women. The men remembered when they had been in Wally's position of being shamed and blamed during a breakup, which an experienced man avoids with a quiet ghosting. The women anticipated the comic confessing how he was to blame. She said I worked too much, Wally admitted. The women in the audience clapped hearing the familiar charge that a man was to blame. The men looked away while sheepishly grinning in the face of their own memories of romantic losses credited to that same cause. Okay, maybe comics don't work that hard. For me, I do comedy because I can't afford a therapist. Comedy doesn't exactly pay the bills, so like other artists, I have a day job. I am a quality control specialist at a condom factory. The audience softly laughed in surprise. Not only was his job unexpected, but they had not realized that it existed or what it entailed. It is an important job. I am the guy that tries on every condom to make sure that it does not break. You're welcome, America. The men groaned in disgusted belly laughter as they were not expecting Wally to go there. The women looked at each other unsure whether they were supposed to laugh. It is a good union shop where we follow the safety rules. I work 2 3.5-hour shifts. 'Cause you know with those pills you'd have to go to the ER if they are still working after 4 hours. Men blushed with embarrassment as they laughed because they were not allowed to enjoy juvenile bodily jokes in current year. Women could not help but cackle at a man remaining unsatisfied for hours. After giving the audience a moment to enjoy themselves, Wally began to escalate. We have a good team at the condom plant. I work with a woman named Maud. She kinda looks like Edward Scissorhands with her long fake fingernails. Her job is to roll up the condom after I have tested it. In horror at thoughts of Maud's talons creating holes, the men laughed at the previously unimagined. Women laughed with joy at the idea of condoms coming pre-perforated so she would not have to make holes in them using a thumbtack. The curse of a comic is to get lost in tangents. I was telling you about my breakup from working too much. To start, I just wanted you to understand how hard I worked as I broke my balls to make money for my girlfriend. All the men reverted to 8-year-olds laughing as they enjoy the verbalization of the naughty. The women giggled only slightly as they suspected an unflattering subtext. I loved my girlfriend. I thought that I was going to marry her. The women let out an inadvertent awe as he confessed the feeling and aspiration they longed for a man to feel about them. Suddenly, they felt trust in Wally as he might be one of the good guys after all. One woman thought that maybe Wally could fix himself so he could grovel until his girlfriend took him back. Wally transitioned. Things seemed to be going great between my girlfriend and I until one day, You know in the cartoon when the coyote runs over the cliff and keeps running on the air until he looks down, then his whole perspective changes before he accelerates into a bone-crushing crash. The audience nodded in recognition from their own lives as the men laughed at memories of the bad relationships they had survived. It is not as fun as it looks in the cartoons. The women quieted as if feeling accused. So, I come home after a long day of pulling a double at the condom factory. I found my girlfriend in the living room taking more selfies for her IG. Seeing me, she laughed while looking at me oddly. Obviously, I should have recognized the danger and slowly walked backwards out of the room. However, I mistakenly thought she was being playful. I teased her a bit, trying to get her to spill, but she tried to act shy about telling me. Wally chided the audience for not responding to the obvious sign of danger. Haven't you ever met a woman before? My girlfriend usually has diarrhea of the mouth and can't stop herself from saying whatever she is thinking as a stream of consciousness without filter or logical coherence. The women blushed and folded their arms across their chests as they involuntarily recognized themselves having similar behavior. Or so I thought. The men's eyes widened in anticipation of the impending twist. After a few minutes of inviting her answer, my girlfriend silently smiled before blurting out that she was cheating on me. The men groaned in sympathetic pain and the women laughed at Wally's hurt expression. Wally paced the stage for a moment to allow the shift to sink in as he dramatized a shocked reaction to the revelation. Now you dudes are probably wondering how her cheating on me is my fault. Meanwhile, most of you ladies already have 3 ways to blame me off the top of your head. For those few ladies who don't, I expect that you are going to take notes. My apologies, brothers, but this is what free therapy looks like. The women laughed, but for a reason completely different than the men. At first my mouth moved, but no sounds were coming out. As my vision turned red, I started saying words for which my mother would have washed out my mouth with soap. Meanwhile, my girlfriend looked at me as if I injured her in my response. Eventually, I could intelligently express myself with only one word repeated: why? The audience hung on Wally's words, anticipating an answer. Wally pointed at a disbelieving woman in the front row who was sitting with her date. Well, it looks like my ex-girlfriend has at least one supporter in the audience. To the man sitting with the woman in the front row, Wally added, "Sorry, buddy." Addressing the disbelieving woman in the audience, "I get it, you are only hearing my side of the conversation. I might be biased as it is my life. It may be too much to expect for my therapy audience to understand what I am saying. I guess you all had to be there to get it." Wally pointed one hand in the air, then snapped his fingers.
The club became immediately dark. There was a sound of thunder, then a pink spotlight showed a beautiful young woman on the stage. She said into a microphone in her hand, "I'm sorry, I couldn't keep it hidden. Please don't break up with me, baby. I love you."
A blue spotlight appeared to reveal Wally standing on the other side of the stage. He replied to the beautiful young woman in the pink spotlight, "Bambi, I don't understand. I was thinking about asking you to marry me." "What the hell?"
The woman subtly bit her lip in innocence before saying, "I said I was sorry, babe. Please forgive me." She looked at him like a kitten who had made a mess but was too cute and dull to punish.
Wally broke the fourth wall for a moment to address the audience as he slapped his forehead, "Stupid, stupid, stupid. Never ask questions that you do not want to know the answers to." Yet I suddenly turned into a newspaper reporter gathering facts about my own life. Who? What? Where? When? How? Ignorance is bliss, and what came next destroyed my ignorance.
Bambi began her reply to Wally. "Her name is Ricky. She became my coworker on my OnlyFans account. We do scenes together. We shoot here at home while you were at work. It all started because I was bored and wanted extra shopping money."
Shaking his head, Wally surveyed the crowd with his mouth agape in surprise. It was at that moment that all the naughty videos I had viewed of a particular genre flashed through my mind. Kids, moments like this are why you should follow Nancy Reagan's advice and just say no to porn. The woman in the audience glared at Wally in disapproval for his history of objectifying women while beginning to feel satisfied that he was punished. Meanwhile, the men wiped away tears of sympathy as they laughed so hard. Turning back to address Bambi, in a trembling voice of shock, Wally asked, "What are you to each other?"
Matter-of-factly, Bambi replied, "Ricky and I are basically girlfriends. You are my side piece, sorry."
Wally reeled back as if from a verbal blow before he responded to Bambi's revelation. "Ouch. You are basically living off me like I'm a sugar daddy, but I am your side piece?"
Innocently, Bambi nodded in reply, "Yes, exactly, sorry." Howls and groans of laughter erupted from the men in the audience before a man in the back shouted, "Cuck." Meanwhile, the ladies became nervous that such truths were being said in front of men who had been trained to not recognize that women could do such a thing.
Wally held his head as if trying to keep his mind from exploding while the audience reacted. As the audience quieted, Wally inquired of Bambi, "Does Ricky have a side piece too? Maybe he and I could form a support group or something?" The audience laughed in surprise.
After the audience began to quiet, Bambi answered, "Ricky has 4 side pieces." Again, the surprised audience was overwhelmed by laughter as Wally's problems escalated.
Wally stalked menacingly around the stage while muttering under his breath to allow the audience time to recover. To Bambi, he lamented, "I think that I am going to puke. I have been sleeping with you, thus by extension everyone you are sleeping with plus everyone they have been sleeping with." The men in the audience groaned in amused familiarity to Wally repeating the line from a safe sex PSA. Wally continued with a question to Bambi, "For you, has it been just Ricky and I, or do you have a harem? I just need to know, as when I have a conversation with my doctor before he runs the STD panel, he will probably want a number. How many people are you doing right now?"
As if it were no big deal, Bambi confessed, "I have a lot, and I mean a lot of side pieces, about 46. The audience rode the wave of escalation with laughter. However, many women in the audience with professional levels of sexual experience despite being amateurs were embarrassed by the audience's shocked reaction.
Wally wanders the stage in disbelief before asking Bambi, "What is the split between men, women, and farm animals?" The audience came to a sudden hush so as not to miss her answer.
Bambi was sheepishly quiet for a few moments as the anticipation built before replying, "About 13, 11, and 22. Roughly speaking." The audience remained silent as they tried to stop themselves from laughing.
Before the audience lost that battle, Wally charged, 22 farm animals? I assume most of those are horses." At this point the audience could no longer hold it in as waves of laughter rolled across the audience before crashing up upon the stage. One quiet blushing woman in the audience was grateful that Wally had said horses instead of dogs. As the audience released their built-up tension, Bambi gave exaggerated nods of affirmation to Wally's charge. Wally stalked the stage muttering invectives like "finghorse chicks." Before the audience had fully recovered, he continued by asking Bambi, "I have got your phone number if my doctor or the health department has questions. Are there any STDs that you know that you have? Just to make my doctor's job easier."
Relieved, Bambi said, "They say confession is good for the soul. I have HIV, chlamydia, syphilis, and gonorrhea." The audience gasped at the risk to the man testing the nation's condoms. The men shook their heads as they giggled without any survivor's guilt of having dodged that bullet from Bambi. A few guys changed their minds about trying to ask her out after the show. The women laughed nervously as they remembered their own prior trips to the clinic or doctor to get tested. One woman covered her mouth as she laughed to cover the cold sore on her lip.
Wally hung his head in defeat as he asked Bambi, "Why did you do this to me? I'm a good guy. I treated you well."
Shrugging her shoulders in avoidance of accountability, Bambi answered meekly, "I didn't mean to, I couldn't stop myself, I got carried away. I know it may not change much, but I love you, babe, I really do." The men in the audience had begun to feel hostility towards Bambi as she triggered unpleasant memories of breakup conversations. The women worried that Wally would not accept blame for this whole situation with Bambi, who was obviously a victim of men who had abused her in the past.
As if giving voice to the men in the audience, Wally commanded Bambi, "Pack your shit and get out. I never want to see you again." The men in the audience cheered while the women looked at them in disgust. The women who had hoped that Wally would grovel so he could win Bambi back became convinced that Wally had ruined his chance.
As her mouth stayed wordlessly open, Bambi put her hands to her cheeks in shock that consequences exist. Recovering herself, she innocently begged, "Please give me just one more chance. I promise I won't betray you like this again." However, Wally's resolve did not buckle to a woman's pleading as is typical for men. Grasping for a new opportunity, Bambi slowly approached Wally while teasing, "I'll go, but before that I must tell you something."
Wally interrupted her words and movement towards him. "Tell me while you pack."
Bambi pulled her trump card, so she would not lose her meal ticket. "Promise you won't be mad. I'm pregnant." The men in the audience howled from their painful flashbacks. The women snickered and smiled slyly as they anticipated that Wally would have to surrender to Bambi now.
Listening to the audience release their emotions, Wally paced the stage menacingly. Before the audience could catch their breath, Wally replied to Bambi, "Get an abortion, as with your STDs that kid doesn't have a chance. That diseased birth and life would be a cruelty for a child." The women in the audience shrieked in horror because a man had suggested what choice a woman should make about her pregnancy. The men cheered Wally, finding his backbone. Wally continued, "It probably isn't even mine. Probably is Mr. Ed's, and you are going to give birth to a centaur." The men erupted with laughter, applause, and cheers in response to Wally's resolve in the face of paternity uncertainty and possibly an attempt to baby trap him.
Weakly, Bambi asserted, "I swear it's your baby." The women in the audience were angry with Wally for denying his child. They heckled him by challenging his manhood.
Wally retorted towards Bambi, but also the audience, "How could you even begin to guess who's the father? Maury is going to need a supercomputer to figure it out." The men laughed as a few men shouted out in unison, "You are not the father."
Bambi begged, "But please, just listen to me. I swear it's yours." The women in the audience could feel Bambi's desperation and fear of abandonment.
Dismissively, Wally replied, "Just like you swore it was you and me? Now I find out it is us and a male soccer team, the Rockets, plus a whole barnyard."
Exasperated that Wally would not give in, Bambi begged, "Please, babe, just listen." As Wally focused his attention on her, Bambi began to sob as she said to him, "I'm sorry, please don't leave me."
Shaking his head, Wally corrected, "This is my place. You are the one who is leaving." At this, the men cheered and began giving each other high fives in celebration of a man scoring just in time.
Bambi continued to cry as she pleaded, "But I love you, baby, I really do." The woman in the audience shrunk under the overt jubilation of the men. Recognizing that she was losing Wally's money, Bambi shifted tactics by seductively asking, "But don't I get to say goodbye at least?"
Firmly, Wally said, "Nope. You get to run down the driveway screaming, 'I am going. Please don't shoot.'" The men responded as if they had just watched Wally achieve the greatest come-from-behind victory in the history of mankind. As Bambi turned to exit the stage, Wally continued, "Get the hell out. I would sick the dogs on you, but I love my dogs." He thought for a moment before saying, "Wait. Did you fuck my dogs?" The men in the audience exhaled a collective groan before belly laughing.
Sobbing Bambi stopped, then replied, "No, I haven't." The pink spotlight extinguished to leave Wally alone on the stage.
Turning to the audience, Wally concluded, "Damn, my dogs are smarter than me." With that, Wally thanked the crowd and exited the stage. The men in the audience laughed and applauded. The women conspired to report Wally for committing a hate crime, but they could not figure out how to justify it.